Codemasters were very much the kings of 8-bit budget gaming right from their inception in the mid-1980s. With their bright, eye-catching cassette tape box art and games that nearly always provided good value for money at a pocket money affording price point, they knew what sold and capitalised on whatever it was to lure kids into parting with their hard-earned paper round money. With an endless wave of simulators and successful platformers, the Darling brothers had already expanded a little outside the $1.99 budget range with their Codemasters Plus range, which retailed at $4.99. There were just 3 games in the Plus range, with Jet Bike Simulator and Professional BMX Simulator basically being smartened up versions of previous games, with 2 cassettes for extra courses and posters and stickers to bump up justifying the extra cost. The third Plus game you can see me holding here was in support of the rather badly managed sports aid called The Race Against Time. My copy here with Jesse Owens on the cover was actually recalled because Codemasters had not sought permission from the Owens estate to use the image, so the game was replaced with a Carl Lewis one instead. Again, to command the price point, albeit for charity, a double dual cassette box was used, despite just one included cassette, and even an old Peter Gabriel song was chucked in. This was an Oliver Twins game on the Spectrum and CPC, but needed someone to code it for the Commodore 64. Codemasters got in touch with Colin Jones, who had sent some of his work their way for evaluation, which they deemed good enough to give him the job in converting this charity game to the C64. Colin had done bits and pieces prior to this, nothing spectacular, and fortunately only the game design element in the rather horrid Grange Hill experience, so this was a good gig for him. The conversion itself didn't really go down too well, getting a very low 30% for example in Zap magazine here, who suggested just donating directly to the cause and bypassing the game altogether. But it did give Colin a foot in the door at Codemasters. Having seen the deluge of football management simulators on the 8-bits, Colin wondered why nobody expanded out of the sports sims and thought a music industry one would be fun. Clearly he'd never played Virgin Games' 1984 game The Biz then. But he spoke to Codemasters about the potential of a music management sim and, well, they loved the idea. In Colin's mind this was always going to be a fun tongue-in-cheek game with spitting image type characters in it that would obviously be well known but renamed to something else more comical. He wasn't sure if this would be acceptable, but Codemasters attained some legal advice, and for the same satirical reasons Spitting Image were producing TV shows with no bother, the same satirical license could be used for a computer game. Now, at the same time that Colin was pitching his game idea, a graphical artist was pitching his wares also. Chris Graham was on a YTS scheme, which, although arty, was only paying a pittance, so after relentless badgering by one of his friends to send his demos off to Codemasters, who were advertising for designers, he did so, and they were suitably impressed and he landed the job. Now he was truly in his element, getting paid a proper salary whilst being surrounded by so many people he idolised in the industry. Like Mark Jones in one of my previous videos, he too had to move away from home to be office based at Codemasters, which was made up of a main building and several porter cabins to work in. Some nights when everybody had gone home, he'd stay over rather than go back to an empty hotel room and play on all the computers into the night before crashing in a porter cabin on the floor with a sleeping bag. He really felt like he was living the dream. His first job at Codemasters though was this new music management sim. Colin had told him he wanted spitting image-like characters that were caricatures but recognisable ones. He spent every waking minute and sometimes into the night when he couldn't sleep, creating, fixing, deleting, forever changing his drawings to get the characters right. He needed to impress on his first job, and when you look at the roster available, there is no doubt his work was spot on, and a huge part of the appeal of the game. Some of the character names still make me smile today. Mince is a particular favourite. Dick Knackered. Annie Smallpox. Derek Clapped Out. I love this illustration of Cliff Richard as Stiff Pilchards with the little picture of the Bible. It's just brilliant. So with this satirical, fun, cheeky music management sim underway, what was it going to be called? Well, the Sun newspaper back in the 1980s was never a paper you bought for sophisticated journalism. It was essentially an entertainment red top, generally publishing sensationalised, misleading stories with a right-wing bias. It was rightly criticised and subject to boycotts primarily from the Merseyside region in England for its disgusting depiction of the behaviour of fans during the Hillsborough football disaster in April 1989. Despite this and other stories, the Sun's popularity during the 1980s was most definitely at its peak. In 1987, nearly 4 million copies were being purchased every day. It was incredibly popular for its mix of stories from the news and world of entertainment. A great example of this was probably its most popular front page story of the mid-80s, when model Louise Fox supposedly admitted to Freddie Starr sticking her hamster between 2 slices of buttered bread and eating it. The actual event happened some years prior, and the headline was a Max Clifford publicity stunt to raise Freddie's profile. He had actually taken her hamster and put it in between 2 bits of bread as a joke, after she told him to bugger off and make his own snack when he stayed overnight after doing a gig nearby. But certainly no hamster was eaten. This was the launch pad for ridiculous stories that were utter nonsense, even more so than the regular journalism, to make headline news. Some publications did nothing but that, ridiculous stories and boobs sold papers, like the Daily Sport for instance. So Colin liked the play on words with replacing Freddie Starr with Rockstar and calling the game Rockstar Ate My Hamster. To keep with the newspaper theme, the front cover of the game would look like the cover of The Sun, renamed to The Stun, with the game title as a headline, and voila, the game seemed even more attractive to wannabe pop star game purchasing kids. There would be a caveat though. This was not going to be another budget title, or even a plus range game. Oh no, this was going to be a full pricer. This was going to be Codemasters Gold. It was not the first Codemasters Gold title, but it would be the last of 2. The first being a collection of 4 average football games chucked in a box with a pretty cool Shoot magazine endorsed poster and some very suspiciously bad artwork on the back. Has that child broken his ankle, and what on earth has happened to his head? So Rockstar was presented in a similar manner. Here is my big box copy next to a normal size budget offering to give you a sense of scale. There's a Stun exclusive advertised about aliens stealing a Volvo, more on that in a minute. A main story about a masseuse called Susie Knockers, no really, who had a hamster eaten by Hazzy Hasbeen, although vegetarian Hazzy denies any wrongdoing. We get our first inkling of the game with a picture of Wacko Jacko and a story about Baked Bean farting Bubbles the monkey. Some more caricatures appear on the back along with screenshots and a basic game premise. Inside we have some rather awesome stickers and rather unnecessarily 2 cassettes, one for the game and one for the data. There is also a copy of the Stun newspaper and apparently a badge that I sadly don't have. Complete inbox versions go for more money than a bag of M&S food shopping, so I don't have one, but it's an interesting look into how what is essentially an unrated kids game was deemed okay back in the late 80s. Firstly, I do love the loading instructions that include a ZX81, a supercomputer, HAL 9000 and an IBM Series 34. Unfortunately, there's no version for the Abacus. So then I tried to find what offended a number of parents here that actually got the game banned in Boots the Chemist apparently, and in some stores it was deemed sellable but only under the counter. We have a TV guide with things like the kids' TV show Captain Ratass. Later on we've got Thug Watch with Nick Gross, more horrific crimes of violence to scare you silly while you make your Horlicks. We've got another kids show called the All New Doggy Doo Show with his cousin Crappy Doos. Beta Blocker Busters with Bob Holiness. Sport as well is covered here with Snooker, the World Lung Cancer Championships live from Sheffield. And the Wiltons, Johnny Boy falls in love with a transvestite. We've got a rather harmless cartoon strip, the Volvo Alien story, which turns out to be just about drink driving, nice, and more on the Bubbles farting story. There's some parody star sign stuff next, which is all fairly harmless until you get to the names of each. Things like Herpes, the Virgin, and Taurus, the Bullshitter. We then have the classified advertising and personal with things like man late 40s, deaf in left ear, wishes to meet ladies similar to enjoy stereo record collection. We then have the Stun crass word with clues like member of the Royals who some say has a fat bottom, or 28 down, our favourite word for Rumpty Tumpty. Some FA Cup late results. Sellafield versus Dynamo Chernobyl was postponed. Oh, Jesus. And Sam Fox Academicals versus Bristol Rovers was abandoned. I presume that's Bristol City. No? So what about the game then? Well, we are going to look at it, but not the version 99.9% of us played when we were kids. To launch the game, Codemasters ran a competition with an obvious partner, the Sun newspaper. Copies of the game were up for grabs, but as can be seen here, it was renamed to Rockstar Goes Bizarre, which was the name of the then Piers Morgan's entertainment column. The Stun renamed back to the Sun, and if you somehow have a copy of this, it might be worth just a few quid now, with only a handful known to exist that never come up for auction. There is, however, backups of this version available to play online, and it's the one we are going to look at today. So what is the difference between this one and the main one, other than the loading screen and the title? Well, bugger all really, except in the normal version there are 49 stars to choose from. In this one, we get some extras. We get Jason Donner Kebab, so maybe this guy was a winner of the game? The Kylie Minogue character is strangely renamed from Bimbo Baggins to Quiley My Nose. We get Queer Mum, which I presume is the Queen Mum, who is dirt cheap but also a pain in the arse. More on her in a bit. Furry, which I presume is Fergie. John Paul Ringo, which is a nice Beatles nod mashup with the Pope. Piers Organ, of course. And By George. And that's it. I say that's it, but it's kind of funny to have characters in the game that are clearly not musicians. So for my band of 4, I always choose 4 members, as these are kind of like lives in the game, called Seb's Place. Consists of the Pope, the Queen Mum, Piers Morgan, and for a little bit of musical talent, Boy George. You get a nice menu screen with our 2 main protagonists, a Robert Maxwell looking chap called Cecil, and Clive, who Cecil often tells to slit his wrists. Charming. With 50k in the bank left to Clive from his Aunt Mabel, you're off and running. After deciding your band name and what kit to buy, you are presented with just 4 options. Practice, which allows you to practice for a few days. I presume this makes you more successful. No idea on the algorithm, by the way. Gig, which is where you spend most of your time on this here tour bus. You choose the venue size depending on budget and price point and how many days, and off you go. You generally make money unless band members start making demands, and this is where the Queen Mother issue started. She always wants shit I couldn't afford, so she had to go. You kind of have to gig a lot, and we will come back to that shortly. Publicity is trying to get your band noticed. Doesn't matter, I think, if it's good or bad, as long as it makes the front page, it seems. We have pixelated page 3 girls and competitions for a year's supply of condoms. Who said this was a kids game, eh? You've got to be careful here, as sometimes things do go bad. I lost the Pope in a nuclear war, which was unfortunate, so it can be a risky business. Gifts are just things you lavish on your stars, I presume to keep them happy, from food to a car, it's up to you. If you get a record deal and make an album, then you get a 5th option to release an album or single. For a single, once you have chosen the quality of the record, you can produce the music video from anywhere in Cricklewood to the Bahamas, with a famous director in tow if you can afford it. Choose a theme to your liking, and away you go. Every Sunday you will get a chart rundown, hopefully with your song involved. You get a nice little tune depicting each track, and then the cycle of gig and publicity goes round until you either run out of money due to some random bad luck, or your pop stars die due to some random bad luck, or you actually complete the game by obtaining 4 platinum discs displayed bottom left of the screen. The random bad luck thing does throw another element into the game, I suppose, with sponsor deals, charity gigs, tour promotions, etc, etc, but these are often nothing more than yes/no answers, and sometimes are completely unavoidable. And, well, that's the game. Now, I will say this before I lay any criticism on the lack of depth here, that I absolutely adored this game when I was 14 or so. Played it for hours, living out my musical fantasies and sniggering at all the naughty jokes and the humour. The game was very much aimed at me. I was its target demographic, so it did its job perfectly back then. But now, I hate to say it, it's really boring. There is so little to do, and the thrill of releasing an album or single is very short-lived. Gig, 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 and then gig some more, so you have oodles of money to throw on your next single, only for your last remaining band member to be thrown in jail. And yes, Gary Glitter is in the game. And then you go bankrupt for the bail. I played for around about an hour and managed nearly a year before I couldn't take it anymore. This game won't give you that nostalgic hit you crave from playing old computer games that are still fun to play, like Bruce Lee or Chucky Egg, etc. But then, if a simple management sim game with no depth whatsoever is what you still crave, then honestly, go nuts here. Spectrum magazines fell into the same trap. Some got it and others didn't, like this, really dry review from Jonathan Davis in Your Sinclair. He is suggesting the game is hysterically funny in a sarcastic review that ends up giving it a very low 35%. A more improved 70% from Crash, but the lack of depth is clearly an issue for them here despite having some fun with it. So what about other versions on computers with more memory? Did they get more stuff? Better graphics? Well, no. The Commodore 64 version is a real disappointment. I'm not sure I've ever seen a game so lifted and shifted from a Speccy port as this one. It's got that kind of Spectrum colour bleed, if you like, over the lines of the characters, black and white band members, even the tunes, all taken as is from the Speccy port. The Zap team were prepared to let the graphics go, but were hugely disappointed by the gameplay, especially at this premium price point. In fairness, probably the best of the 8-bits would have been the CPC version. It runs a bit quicker than the other two, I felt, and looks a lot cleaner also, nice and crisp and defined, with all the bells and whistles attached from the Speccy port. It did get what would of course be a better sounding and looking versions on the Atari ST and Commodore Amiga, but even then neither version feels like it's using the computer's sound and vision capabilities to their potential. You do get the extra pop stars from the Bizarre game here though, with Jason and Boy George, but other than that, it's exactly the same game throughout. So, should you play it now or leave it firmly in your nostalgic memory bank? Well, it's up to you on this one, but it can be quite good fun for half an hour or so, but just don't expect too much out of it, and you might enjoy it that little bit more. There is also a Millennium Edition for each system release by Fire in 2021, and features some of the characters exclusively drawn by Chris Graham again, my favourite being Keith Flint here. And on the Speccy here, you can just load up the normal game and use the new Millennium data, still use the old one, or like me here, use a mix of both, with The Weeknd, Jeff Lynne from ELO, Keith Flint and the Queen Mum in my group. Who could ask for more, eh? Well, maybe some proper music in the chart section in these modern times. So sit back and enjoy a new and improved Top 10 countdown. And as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you all on the next one. Bye for now.
You are a freak, I am chic. Hey, hey. A tiger's the peak, my time as a leak. Hey.
You are a sheep I like to keep, but he's a creep, but he's a creep. It's going on. Something weird with Papa done. Papa's in love with a trucker. I don't know what to do. Papa's in love with a trucker, and not in love with you. Isn't it strange?
The dead end world, going fast. East End boys, built to last. Everything makes me gasp. everything makes me gust. West End girls of the past.
I like big butts, I cannot lie. I like them so big it makes me cry. You are my buttock star. Hooks, ooh-ah, through the law. Buttocks everywhere. Buttocks, I don't care.
Death, destruction, screaming in pain. Drink my weight in poison. I don't till make me destroy it all. Drink.
Grenade switch to on, so we can dance all night long. We may not hear that okay, but we like to keep dancing the blues away. We are your car crash. We will give you serious whiplash. We will trick nasty rotten, so you can kiss my bottom.